Okay, sorry for the delay. Sound check. Is the sound okay? Anybody hear me? If you can, let me know in the chat. Okay. All right, so somebody hears me. Okay. All right. So today I'm going to talk about Red Africa, which is basically the three states of Ethiopia, Angola, and Mozambique. From the mid 70s, Mozambique and Angola coming under communist rule in 1975 after the abdication of the Portuguese following the Carnation Revolution in 1974. And Ethiopia was independent state, never colonized by the Europeans. It becomes briefly occupied by the Italians coming in from Eritrea and Somalia during World War II. And the monarch, Emperor Haile Selassie, is overthrown in 1974, and the Derg takes power. Although they do not form a political party along the lines of the MPLA in Angola or Frelimo in Mozambique, which are basically uh, national liberation movements that become communist parties. Ethiopian Workers' Party is formed a number of years after the Derg takes power in 1974. So you have a strange phenomena. I think the only other place that had it was in Cuba early on after the '59 revolution, where you have a strong charismatic leader establishing a Marxist-Leninist system, but no organized uh, single party to do it through. Okay, so there was a little homework assignment there. So, of the three states, obviously Ethiopia is the odd man out, being a former independent kingdom under Emperor Haile Selassie. Was closely allied with the United States. It starts in the 30s following the Italian invasion in 1935, but during the Cold War in the 1950s and 60s and very early 70s, the U.S. Had close military relations with Ethiopia and a number of military bases for tracking things, for testing various weird and strange weapons out in the Abyssinian desert where nobody would figure out what they were doing, but also to keep an eye on the straits from the Red Sea going in from between Somalia, which was under a pro-Soviet government under Siad Barre, and Yemen, the southern part, which becomes a pro-Soviet state in the late 1960s, the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen. So this was considered a strategic point, even though Ethiopia itself was quite poor, didn't have a lot of resources desirable to the U.S. Main product was coffee, which will continue under the communist government. They will continue to sell most of their coffee to capitalist states in Europe and North America, with the exception of 1977, when the DDR had a horrible coffee shortage and bought the entire Ethiopian crop to alleviate the lack of coffee for the citizens of the DDR. So, I mean, if things weren't bad enough, Imagine no coffee, right? So I mean, at least the Socialist Unity Party ruling the areas of Germany around Saxony and Thuringia had the foresight to get coffee, and not only that, from a socialist state. So, this is try and break the dependency at least for 1 year, but that was all it did. The rest of the time, Ethiopia, Angola, and Mozambique remained dependent upon capitalist society, despite the fact that self-economic independence, autarky, was a major selling point for Marxist-Leninism and Soviet-style socialism among the third world, the so-called undecided camp. So most of Africa, a few exceptions, Liberia, obviously, not third world, but in the U.S. camp. South Africa, not in the undecided camp, but certainly most states after the end of colonial rule, largely after the French leave in the early 60s, were non-aligned states that were trying to get as much benefit from any place they could. But the states of Ethiopia, Angola, Mozambique were not able to industrialize under socialism. They were not able to get away from dependency upon a single crop commodities sold to capitalist states. In the case of Ethiopia, coffee. In the case of Angola, it was oil. The oil was directly extracted by Gulf. And then Chevron bought Gulf and took over the operations. The oil fields were protected by Cuban soldiers who were directly paid by Chevron in cash in violation of U.S. law, but no executive of Chevron was ever arrested or even questioned about this illegal activity. And this was at a time when the United States was officially supporting the opposition to the MPLA in Angola, UNITA, under Jonas Savimbi, fighting in the southeast with the support of the Republic of South Africa. And Mozambique, the dependency was largely upon remittances sent by Mozambicans working in mostly gold mines in South Africa, some working in coal mines and other extractive industries underground in the Republic of South Africa. But for the most part, there is no ability, despite the imposition of central planning and state ownership of industry and collectivization of agriculture, to break away from the old economic systems that existed under the Portuguese. That is dependency upon oil for Angola and dependency upon remittances from South Africa, from Mozambique, or the dependency that Ethiopia had established already before '74 on export of coffee. Hello, Philip. Yeah, Minoan is right. The East German government were very smart not to allow people to run out of coffee. The socialist bloc kind of got a break in '59 because Cuba has both excellent coffee and excellent tobacco. But the coffee in Ethiopia is quite good too. Again, most of this being sold not to fellow socialist states in Comecon, but the capitalist world. So the states of socialist orientation, the Soviet government never proclaimed any of the states in Africa to be fully socialist states, could not break away from dependency on international capitalist economy. I said the situation in Angola, where the Cuban government is paying is being paid by Chevron directly to defend its oil fields so that the anti-communist forces supported by the U.S. government under Ronald Reagan do not sabotage them. It was truly bizarre, but it does show that international capitalists really don't care about anything other than profit. All right. So that failed. Also, the internal class and ethnic racial hierarchies in these states did not change a lot. So the biggest example, of course, and this was already complained about during the struggle against the Portuguese colonialism, was that the MPLA, which was founded in Portugal by basically Angolan affiliates that were studying there as university students to the Portuguese Communist Party, had a very largely disproportionate number of whites and mulattoes in its leadership. And in fact, both the first president of Angola under the MPLA, Agostinho Neto, and the second one, Eduardo dos Santos, had white wives. Neto married a white Portuguese woman, and dos Santos a Russian woman. And of course, the dos Santos daughter may be the richest woman in the world because she basically was allowed to privatize the Angolan oil from the state to her own personal property. She is obviously of mixed race. So this is a problem. People like Roy Innes of CORE were complaining about before 1974. Is there were three groups in Angola fighting the Portuguese. They were the MPLA, which eventually took power in Luanda, but was almost immediately overthrown by UNITA coming with the South African army up from Namibia, which became a South African League of Nations mandate after World War I, and they did not relinquish control of it until just before Mandela was elected president and white rule ended. The FNLA under Roberto Holden, like UNITA, fought against the MPLA based out of Congo, supported by the government of Zaire under Mobutu, with support coming from the CIA as well. Philip Daniels, I don't know about the Germans in Angola. The vast majority of Europeans in Angola are, of course, Portuguese, as are most of the mixed race population. They are the result of Portuguese and African union. I suspect that the Germans in Angola came there from Namibia, which of course still has a significant German speaking population among the whites. So there's also a number of Afrikaner speakers among them. Okay, so in Mozambique, there was only one opposition movement because the government of Tanzania under Julius K. Nyerere said that if they wanted to use the territory of Tanzania for training and, more importantly, sanctuary in their fight against the Portuguese, they would have to have a single unified national liberation movement. So Frelimo was formed and came under the rule of Eduardo Mondlane, who was killed before Mozambique got its independence in 1975. After him, he is succeeded by Samora Machel, who died in a mysterious plane crash in the 1980s. They believe that was organized by the Bureau of State Security in South Africa. during the last years of apartheid. And he was, after his death, we start to see a significant movement for change in Mozambique, in part because of the pressure from Renamo, which forms after Mozambique becomes communist. So in Angola, the opposition to the communist government is a fellow anti-colonial guerrilla movement, UNITA. It was backed by China in its early days, fighting against the Portuguese, and got taken over by the U.S. and particularly South Africa as the main patron after 1975. Renamo in Mozambique, the breakaway in some senses from Frelimo, in that its founding leader, Afonso Dhlakama, was a Frelimo leader who fled into Rhodesia and then was given aid and assistance by Rhodesian intelligence. And then after 1980, when Zimbabwe is formed, they moved to South Africa and are supported by Boss. And then the South Africans cut them off in the Nkomote Accords in the middle of the 80s, but they survive on their own and are able actually to pressure the Mozambican government into allowing them to participate in parliamentary elections. And they vary how much, but since they've been allowed to compete, between 25 and as many as 45% of the seats in Mozambique have gone to Renamo. So Frelimo still has a majority, but Renamo certainly has significant support, particularly in rural areas in the north. Ethiopia, why did the emperor's regime fall? Well, the emperor was very backward. Agriculture was still using the old repatriation system, where you would have strips of land that were owned by a feudal lord, and the use of them, not the ownership, would be given to by usufruct to families on the basis of need rather than on the basis of production. In practice, very similar to what existed in Tsarist Russia, the Mir system, and the fact that Ethiopia has very close religious ties with Russia through the Russian Orthodox Church and the Coptic Church of Ethiopia. I suspect that there actually was a Russian influence in this kind of land tenure system. But by, of course, the 1970s, this land tenure system, which was already archaic, when Stolypin became dedicated to eliminating it in the Russian Empire, right? By 1970s, obviously, even in Ethiopia, it's a totally backward, retrograde system that is keeping the peasantry poor, who are basically serfs, but it's also impeding in modern production. So you had in Ethiopia, like many revolutionary systems, largely in terms of agriculture, a very backward system with the majority of the population, but at the same time, rapid modernization, particularly in education, and particularly education of people who are in the officer corps, the army in Ethiopia. As I said, the United States has very close ties with it. We like to test weird stuff in the desert. We had big radar stations there. We wanted to make sure oil could continue to flow out of Saudi Arabia through the Red Sea up to Europe or out of the Indian Ocean. And so a lot of Ethiopians, particularly university students abroad, became Marxist-Leninist. When the communists came to power, actually their chief enemy in the Red Terror, where they shot as many as 500,000 people were other communists who were of different ideological factions. So you had about 500,000 people from various socialist, Marxist, communist organizations, many of them led by former students from the university students that had gone to the United States and Europe and other places coming back. And so this is similar, we see in some other places, Afghanistan. The communists come to power in a military coup. Those are military officers that had been trained in the Soviet Union and saw how much more advanced places like Uzbekistan were than Afghanistan. So a lot of the military leaders, the officer corps, decided the Soviet Union was a better model than the kind of medieval feudal system that Haile Selassie was still supporting, at least in the countryside, which was the vast majority of the population in Ethiopia, including the man who comes to power, Mengistu, who was still alive in exile in Zimbabwe, not been tried for any of his crimes. The 500,000 people shot in the Red Terror in the late 70s, the 1 million people who died in a very much Soviet-style created famine in 83-85 through collectivization of agriculture, and mass internal relocation of people, similar to Soviet dekulakization. And of course, they had their own system of camps and torture centers. There is a memorial museum in Addis Ababa to the victims of communism. I believe it is the only such museum on the African continent, the second largest continent in the world in terms of both land area and population. So it's something to bear in mind that there's at least a museum to communist atrocities in Ethiopia. There is not one in the United States, nor is there one in Canada. So, in some senses, the Africans are ahead of us. All right. So there's, of course, stability and peace are other things that obviously by coming to power they thought they would achieve. They did not. The civil war continued in Angola. UNITA and FNLA immediately turned against the MPLA with the help of South Africa. FNLA eventually wiped out, but UNITA lasted as an effective combat force until Savimbi himself is killed. Savimbi, interesting character, had a PhD in economics from Switzerland. Was a black supremacist, but cooperated militarily closely with the South Africans fighting against the MPLA. Now, the way the communist regime managed to stay in power against the insurgencies, so in Angola, UNITA mainly, in Mozambique, Renamo, initially supported by Rhodesian intelligence and then later South African intelligence before being cut off by Pretoria. And then Ethiopia, the anti-Amharic separatists, particularly in Eritrea and Tigray, but also the Oromo and the Somalis, and there's an invasion by Somalia, are all opposed to the Amharic communist regime of the Derg under Mengistu. So most of the soldiers fighting in these countries in Africa come from Cuba. And the first major intervention is in Angola to save the MPLA from the South Africans in UNITA. Airlift is conducted by Cuba through Yugoslavia. The Soviet Union initially was not supportive of the intervention. The Cubans went ahead and did it on their own under Castro, went through Yugoslavia, not the Warsaw Pact, as the middle point, and then presented Brezhnev in the USSR with a fait accompli, and then the Soviets and other Warsaw Pact nations, especially the DDR, began supporting the MPLA militarily in its fight against UNITA and the South African Defense Force. In Ethiopia, a little later, in 77, when Somalia invades, about 16,000 Cubans on top of the 40,000 already in Angola arrive in Ethiopia to support the communist regime there. So all in all, we include the smaller number of Cuban military advisors in Mozambique. There's over 60,000 Cuban combat soldiers in the three countries. The largest number by far was over 40,000 in Angola, fighting to protect the oil fields of Chevron. The other forces we see primarily in Mozambique, where the Cubans are much fewer in number, coming from other African states, most notably from Mozambique. Zimbabwe is support and repayment for support that Frelimo gave to ZANU during the years 1975 to 1980, fighting against the white Rhodesian government, particularly prohibiting the Rhodesians from exporting out to the ports of Mozambique on the Indian Ocean. And then we have there a large number of Zimbabweans, also some Tanzanians, and interestingly enough, also some Ethiopian soldiers, as well as military officers, mostly in a training capacity from the Soviet Union, East Germany, mainly involved in training police, North Korea, and of course Cuba. But overwhelmingly, most of the foreign soldiers in Angola and Ethiopia are Cuban combat soldiers, mostly Afro-Cubans, volunteered in many cases to fight in Africa against particularly the South African Defense Force in Angola. So this is the situation up until the end of the 80s. And of course, after 1991, with the end of the Soviet Union, we have an almost complete cutoff of finances and armaments coming from the former socialist bloc. East Germany no longer exists. The Soviet Union no longer exists. Cuba, without massive subsidies from the USSR, is not able to continue with support, but they do win a massive tank battle before this in Angola at Quito Coanda. So both the case of Angola and Mozambique, the MPLA and Frelimo are still in power, but in both cases they basically renounce the economic parts of socialism. Angola, particularly the MPLA, becoming hyper-capitalist. And in both cases, there is a withdrawal of foreign soldiers. UNITA is basically defeated after Savimbi dies, because without him, it's headless. But as I noted in Mozambique, Renamo forces itself into the parliament, and it Depending on which election, they may have as many as 45% of the seats at any of the time since they've been allowed to compete. You also see, of course, a lot of corruption. This existed under the communists, but there weren't a lot of resources, particularly in Mozambique and Ethiopia. Angola, of course, always had oil and the corruption of Gulf and Chevron. But we see intervention already started in the communists, but becoming really big after the communist NGOs, and particularly Swedish NGOs. So if you ever read Henning Mankell, probably the founding father of Swedish noir, he's now dead. I just got this book. This is the last Kurt Wallander book. He deals a lot with it because he went to Angola and Mozambique, but the Swedish NGOs and government were not doing anything good in those countries. They were involved in enriching the corrupt former communist leaders and, of course, their own members in those organizations, including people working in the Swedish embassies. So this is Scandinavia used to have a reputation of not having corruption, but what they did in reality, they just kind of exported it overseas so you couldn't see it. There was a lot going on in places like Luanda and Maputo. All right. In Ethiopia, Mengistu was overthrown by the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front after the Soviets cut them off of arms shipments. And the new Ethiopian government, as I said, renounces Marxism, Leninism, more or less, especially as it was practiced by the Derg and the Ethiopian Workers' Party. They build a museum to the victims of the previous regime. They want to try Mengistu, but he flees to Zimbabwe, and Mugabe, who is still in power at that time, does not allow his extradition. So Mengistu is still alive, living in Zimbabwe, safe from being tried for his crimes as a communist in Ethiopia. So anybody have any questions, comments, want to come on, discuss this? I know not a lot of people are terribly interested in African history. But what it does show is that, one, the things that it actually was able to accomplish in the Soviet Union, for instance, industrialization, elimination of economic dependence upon most of the capitalist world, the one exception being the importation of grain, and overcoming class differences, although they were less successful on racial and ethnic issues, but certainly far less inequality economically in the Soviet Union than most places. Certainly, if you compare Central Asia to other undeveloped countries. Whereas Angola and Mozambique, along with other Southern African states, are still some of the most unequal societies in terms of wealth distribution on the planet. So that was all those things that they thought they could emulate Soviet success failed, largely because, as Nova and Neff said, the reason the Soviets were able to develop and increase the standard of living and improve social indicators like literacy and education and access to healthcare so greatly in places like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan and Uzbekistan is because they were basically just redistributing resources from richer parts of the Soviet Union, the Baltic states included, as well as Western Ukraine, but also, of course, areas around Moscow and Leningrad into the poorer regions of the Soviet Union. And also, they didn't get away from the worst aspects of existing state socialism in the Soviet Union. You had horrible results from agricultural collectivization, especially in Ethiopia. You had a red terror in Ethiopia. It almost killed as many people as the Soviet Union itself, 500,000 versus about 800,000 if we just look at people shot. And so we kind of have a double failure here. One, it didn't get anything good of the Soviet Union. Two, it got all of the bad stuff of the Soviet Union. So I'll answer the question, but no, why didn't more African countries go communist? Because it was recognized by many African leaders that you could not emulate the Soviet Union in Africa, and that if you attempted something like agricultural collectivization, it would have the same results we saw in Ethiopia in 83 and 85. So this was rejected. The idea of uprooting farmers, the idea of destroying the market women. Most of the so-called African socialist people like Kwame Nkrumah, who was specifically advised by George Padmore not to follow the Soviet model, decided that those things would be a bad idea. All right, thank you, Nullus Abnomocracy. A lobster crustacean. You can buy my book from Columbia University Press or Amazon. So, I think this is the Amazon link. It's $42 at both. So. Hi, hello, Zed. Yes, there was a lot of incompetence and greed in lots of places in Africa. But for the most part, other than Angola, Mozambique, and Ethiopia during the 70s and 80s, they do not opt for the full-blown communism. So when I lived in Ghana from 2011, 2016, we had 12 hours of electricity followed by 24-hour blackout. And I was not too far from the capital city of Accra, but I worked at the main university in the country, University of Ghana in Legon, and it too had no power 24 hours out of every 36. And its hospital also had no power. It had to rely upon generators for 24 out of every 36 hours. All right. Okay. I don't have a set schedule. They give me a new schedule every week, but since I'm no longer under so much stress, I feel like I'm going to die of a heart attack every day. I have time to use the days I have off to give at least once a week little streams like this. So next stream, I don't know what day it will be. I'll find out tomorrow evening, but I will probably do it on the history of Taiwan from 1945 to 1992 or so. And the one after that I will do on food. But I will specifically do it on the foods of countries I have lived in, uh, not including Great Britain. I suppose I could do Great Britain, but I'm not. So I'm just going to do Kyrgyzstan, Ghana, and Iraqi Kurdistan for the food stream. So that will be the next one. But hopefully, by the time I do the one on Taiwan, there'll be a lot of interest in the Taiwan Straits with the conflict with the Chinese Communist Party on the mainland. I could do a stream on famines. We got to do one thing at a time. I'm not going to do more than one a week at this moment, and I can't even tell you which day of the week it is because they don't tell me until Thursday. But today was my day with the day off, so I didn't get to go into work to see what days I have off next week. So I'll find that out tomorrow. At any rate, that's what I have on the Soviet-style socialism in Angola, Mozambique, and Ethiopia. And I think I have the link to the Substack article I have on the failure of Red Africa. So it did not work out well in any of these three states. Well, I talk about how Protestants don't share food during this. Which I don't know which Protestants you're talking about. I was baptized in the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, and Ghanaian Calvinists certainly share food. Well, I'm going to for the food stream. No, I'm just going to talk about the different types of food in the non-European countries I have lived in. So I will start with Kyrgyzstan, where we have the largest European influence on the cuisine, and then mostly Russian and Ukrainian, but also obviously a lot of Central Asian dishes as well, coming from other places, making their way into Kyrgyzstan. So Uzbek and Uyghur dishes in particular, and even some from as far away as Korea. And then I'll deal with Ghana, and finally the last subsection of the food stream will be on Iraqi Kurdistan. So, oh no, this guy is still stuck in Los Angeles. It can't be pleasant. I see Manon has made galupsi. Says it's from a Turkish recipe. Could be. My grandfather made galupsi. And his father was from Volhynia in northwestern Ukraine. All right. So, if anybody wants to come on to discuss Soviet state socialism in Africa, and I think the closest one to emulating the Soviet Union, particularly what existed under Stalin with Ethiopia under Mengistu, you can come on. Also, question asked, what would black Marxism look like? Probably a lot like Ethiopia, although Angola and Mozambique are a little less extreme models. But the African National Congress, the ruling party in South Africa for a long time, was advocating going the way Angola did under the MPLA. When Mandela actually was elected, a lot of this was delayed due to a number of factors, but certainly in 1963, when he was tried, his plan at that time was to transform South Africa into something similar to what happened to the MPLA-controlled areas of Angola after 1975 under Nito. Okay, so the first one is my email address, which is easiest for me. The second one is Twitter. You can direct message me if you want to come on here and discuss anything, but particularly Soviet-style socialism in Africa from 1975 to 1991 or so, when the Soviet Union ceases to exist. Remembers Twitter. Does you remember email? You know how to use email? Okay. All right, let me go check my email. Okay, so I have an email from somebody. I vaguely recognize the name from years ago when I lived in another place, another time. I'm not on Telegram right now. I don't particularly like the platform. It gets too cluttered up with people I don't know. All right, so I have sent a link to the Great Flosser. Let's see if he comes in. Okay. Lux. Yes, I recognize him. He was a great fan of Ruby's hamburgers. Not sure if he has anything to say about Africa, but always interesting to say other things. We'll see what's happening here. Yeah, Zed does. I don't like the interface of Telegram. It's I know lots of people like it because I think it's harder to get censored there than on Twitter, some other places. But you know, the only place I've ever had trouble, I got this 3-day suspension on Twitter. because I used the R word. Um, sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Thank you. You know, the brain is not working. I messed up a guy's name today too. When it's out afternoon, it's like 103 degrees outside. I had to walk miles and miles to the post office uh, to mail my what do you call it? Gas bill. Yeah, it's like right now it's 90 degrees inside under the fan. I can't believe I did that. All right, that was dumb, but all right. I have now, I think, sent the stream, the link. Sorry about that, Eki. That was unintended humor, kind of physical slapstick there. 73 degrees would be freezing cold here. All right, I see this guy. I see this guy, and I've added him. Hello.
How's it going?
Turn up
How's
the
your
Venus
day?
flytrap voice.
Yeah?
You have that voice meant for very late night radio, which means I have to turn up
Yeah.
the volume.
Yeah. It's me. What's going on? How's your beautiful 90-degree day?
Yeah, it's. I wasn't thinking. I don't know why I did that. Other than when it gets really hot, sometimes you just do stupid stuff.
It's okay. It's fine.
Fortunately, work is like air conditioning at 62. So once I adjust from going in from 103 to 62, I'm okay.
Nice. So you get, for a few moments, the chills. Just for a few moments.
No, I've gotten pretty used to the change. It doesn't seem to bother me.
I just imagine that once you're going from like 90 to
It's
freaking mid
higher, usually
60s.
because I have to clock in the afternoon. But
Yeah,
usually I'll start work at about now at this time. It used to be 109, but now it's cooled off to 103.
that's
And
not so
then
bad.
I'll work until almost 11, and then it'll when I get off work it's usually like 92, so it'll drop like 11 degrees.
What's the humidity?
It's close to zero. We're in the desert.
Dude, you should like have some sodium and potassium and magnesium or whatever.
Well, I get that when I'm at work. I work at a grocery store. We sell everything.
Well, that's not too bad, I guess. As long as you're getting a little bit of nutrition in there, because holding on to moisture in that low humidity with that high temperature, it gets rough, dude. It gets really rough. Well,
Yeah, well, I try to keep hydrated, but right now I'm drinking what's called Genius Tea. It's got cinnamon and turmeric in it,
yeah,
but it does help me concentrate. Although it didn't help me send the right link, so
that's
maybe
okay. Yeah, it's fine.
imagine what it'd been like if I hadn't drunk a half a cup of this.
I'm going to be doing an experiment over the next little while. So I've gone from being like a hair pudge to reasonably not trim but close to it. I have this idea that I just want to reduce my body fat so that I don't have any problems with diabetes. It's a weird thing to be paranoid about, but whatever. Anyway,
Aren't you worried about the famine coming up and needing to have the big camel humps to survive just
yeah,
starvation?
yeah. I'm a little worried about that. I will admit.
I since my job is basically the cash is a I work at the cash register in a supermarket. I like see prices like go up like on a daily basis. It's like when you see like the same stuff and like going up. So like some stuff will like literally double in price in like less than a week.
I noticed that with chicken. Chicken is like 20 or 30% more expensive right now. So what they did was they still sell it for the same price. They just reduced how much gets into the bag.
Uh,
So
yeah, that's more sneaky. The
yeah,
McDonald's have been doing that because a lot of my Big Mac is the size of a White Castle slider.
yeah, yeah.
But
So it
but some of the like, especially like the stuff that used to be cheap. So like there used to be this was frozen fried rice and chicken, like kind of fake Chinese, but it was only like $1, right? Yesterday, I noticed the price had gone up to $2. So percentage wise, that's 100% increase.
yeah, yeah. My overall idea is reduce the total number of calories that I consume and do what I can to ensure that they are the highest quality possible. So, one of the things that I've been thinking about is how to deal with calorie deficits. Because I do think that there's going to be a certain amount of feast famine or whatever. And I don't know if this is true. I'm going to start experimenting with this now so that I've got a couple of months of this under my belt. I hear that when you are hungry, part of it could be emphasis on could be a desire for salt. So what I'm going to do is experiment with reducing my total calorie intake because I actually do take in just a couple more calories than I burn per day. Not good, but it is true. But I'm just gonna see what happens with taking in salt instead of food, just to see what happens to my appetite. See if I lose weight or gain weight. See if I can go for a little longer on my
Well, you just
fasts.
eat like one little something that one of the processed out of a factory, and it'll have like 1,000 times as much sodium as you're supposed to have.
Oh God. Well, yeah. The trick though is high quality. So I want to see if I can get like iodized sea salt or something like that.
You know what I see
Um,
people buying is weird, the Himalayan pink salt.
I think that's a scam. I don't think
I think
that's.
it is too. I asked him, well, does it taste pink? He's like, get that fake chemical raspberry flavor. And I said, no, it tastes the same as the normal salt. So, well,
Yeah.
what's the difference? He said it's pink. Well, I can see that, but why are you buying the pink instead of the normal
Yeah.
salt?
The other thing is like, don't the Himalayans need that freaking salt? Like, what are we doing taking their salt away from them? That does not seem good.
Well, I mean, I think they have an excess. There's not a lot of people in the Himalayas. There's a lot of salt.
Even still, I
I
don't
don't
know,
think they're
man.
having a salt shortage.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, anyhow, just speaking to your idea of what you're eating and drinking and whatnot. I don't know, and famines and so on. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
have it in the back of my head. Like, what does one do when
Well,
faced
if
with
we're
a
lucky,
calorie
though, even if we
deficit?
do starve to death, we won't, like the Ethiopians, have insult added to injury with the "We Are the World" concert. That
Oh
would be
gosh.
even worse. Starving to death on its own.
Well, no. What'll happen here is they'll say, "Oh, thank goodness those evil freaking white nationalists and fascists are starving. Thank goodness." That's what they'll do. That's what they'll say.
Uh,
So I assume. I don't know.
yeah. Well,
Um,
I don't know what the demographics of it would be, but I suspect that uh, people living in the countryside where they can grow their own food will obviously, like in all other cases of famine, do much better. And I'm pretty sure the percentage of farmers in the U.S. that are white is greater than the percentage of the population as a whole. Still,
Yes, that's completely true. My
I don't know
assumption,
what it is, but I think it's an overwhelmingly European American
yes,
occupation still.
the impression that I get is that Americans are about to become Boers 2.0. So I think that what'll probably end up happening is there's going to be a war on small time farmers, like local farmers that do goats and chickens and vegetable patches and so on, so that they can squeeze them out, and then everything will be industrialized and corporatized.
But
That's what I think they
interesting,
want
the
to do.
Soviets, after they destroyed their agriculture and had the Holodomor, were forced, in just a few short years later, 1935, to give all the farmers a private plot of land back. And these private plots of land became the source of the majority of certain types of food in the Soviet Union. They sold these in these what they call farmers markets, but they were basically private markets for uh, profit of people who worked on the farms that had the little private, what they called kitchen gardens. So potatoes, vegetables, fruits, particularly tropical fruits,
I think they want to do that here in
chickens.
America. I think that's what's going to end up happening here, because what they're doing in the Netherlands, I think that they're going to want to start. I've heard noises about them wanting to do that here in America, and so the assumption is that whether by design or by accident, I don't know. Obviously, I'm just some dude, but the assumption is I think they're going to try to go full blown corporatocracy or whatever, and squeeze out all the local farmers. And so then you get this weird, like, top heavy, brittle system that will inevitably collapse. But between now and that collapse, there's going to be probably a lot of suffering and starvation. So we'll have plenty of Doritos, plenty of Mountain Dew, but
Well,
anything
how do
that's
you make
healthy
Doritos
will.
if there's no maize, though? I mean, a lot of the and Mountain Dew as well. A lot of these are basically just different ways of processing corn.
Exactly. So, and they want us to eat bugs now, apparently.
Yeah, bugs are going to
So,
replace the cow.
yeah, well, a lot of people, they have allergies to shellfish. And so, okay, fine. If people have allergies to shellfish, what does that mean? You've got allergies to freaking insects. I think what's going to happen is a lot of these supplements that get what is it, grillium, something like that. I think these supplements that get crickets or whatever, I think they're going to cause allergic reactions. And so I think
Good,
that if they try to
but
substitute, what will happen
only
is,
like only in people that you know uh, can't eat non-kosher food.
well, yeah, basically, well, yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Anyhow, there will be a period, I believe, if my model serves, I believe there will be a period where there is some formal starvation. And I think what you're talking about with the small plots of lands that are, allowed for the
Yes,
people or
allowed
whatever.
is the proper term.
Yeah, I think that will end up, if my model serves, I think that's what will end up happening inevitably. I hope my model is incorrect. I hope that I'm just pulling nonsense out of my head.
Well, it's
But
hard to know. I mean, because like as I keep telling my mother, if you had told me like anything that happened in the last 2 years was going to happen the year before that, I would have said, no, no, that's just crazy talk. Not even Art Bell and Andy Nowicki make up stuff that
dude, I know. Look,
that far
exactly
off.
back in 2018, anyone saying, "Hey, BTW," this is what 2022 is going to look like. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You got
You would
three.
like want to know who their dealer was. Where did you
Yeah, I
get that
gotta.
stuff, man? That's good stuff you're on.
You're out of your mind. Canada's talking about concentration camps. Australia actually did it. What?
So at this point, it's like somebody tells me something's gonna happen in the future. I don't like discount it as being crazy anymore because I've just seen
I
too much
know.
crazy stuff in the last couple of years. It's just like It could happen. Let's just pray it doesn't.
Yeah, I still kind of think that some of the more pie in the sky ideas are unlikely, but at the same, yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't freaking know. I have no idea.
No, I don't either. But yeah, you're right. I mean, what's happening in the Netherlands? The Netherlands is a per acre of land the largest producer of food in the world. It's
Yeah.
I think when you talk about exports, it may be maybe net exporter number. It's in the top 10 up, but maybe number two. But I remember a lot of the chicken in Ghana came from the Netherlands. But for a country as small as they are, they produce a huge amount of food. And I don't know what the fuck the government is doing.
Well, tinfoil hat time, I guess. But you've heard about the Great Reset, so on and so forth, and it looks as though there is something to that. I think I think they're going for it, and I think what they want to
Or they're gonna
do,
they're gonna just starve all the kulaks. It's gonna be like
yeah,
you know what? Maybe it didn't work all the way for Stalin and Mao and Mengistu, but we're gonna do it full hearted this time.
well, the same mentality that made those are doing this now. It's the same general mindset. Different countries, different specific actors, different peoples, but it's the same mentality. So yeah, basically,
Right, and it's also the same type of cover up.
yes. So
Obviously, people like Durante claimed there was no famine in Ukraine, and
yeah,
but I remember when it was going down because I was 14, 15 years old in Ethiopia. The famine has nothing to do with the government. The famine is just because of natural causes, because they didn't get enough rain. If we just send food over there, everybody will have food to eat, and the famine will go away. And it was all, of course, complete and total bullshit. It was a famine because the Ethiopian government wanted there to be a famine to crush its enemies.
that's that. I believe that is actually their plan now. Firstly, secondly, I think that what they'll end up doing is saying that the famine was orchestrated somehow by fascists or whatever. I
I mean,
actually think
the
that's what they're going to
old
do.
Soviet accusations that the kulaks created the famine by
Yes,
destroying their grain.
yes, yes, dude. I know people that are talking about inflation as though it's price gouging. They genuinely don't understand market manipulations. They do not know what it means to print trillions of fucking dollars within a year. They don't understand the consequences of these things. They genuinely don't. Like actually they really do not understand these concepts.
Well, Paul Krugman claimed that the inflation was a result of the economy growing too fast.
Okay, I'm going to discount everything he says for reasons that I cannot explain.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, basically, I think that what'll end up happening is, in order to get a pliant population, you must make them suffer. And I'm not exactly proud of saying this, but it's kind of true.
Well, that's exactly what happened in eastern Ukraine and Kazakhstan.
Yeah, well,
That after the famine had wiped out the upper layer of farmers, there was no social basis for resistance to Sovietization.
yeah, I actually fear this is going to be the case, and I can actually see in myself that kind of a mindset of resignation, and I don't like it. Obviously, there are certain things that I'll never agree to. There are certain things that I will simply never do. However, the concept of resignation, the idea that there is an antagonistic force that is unrelenting, that has more power than I have, and I I am basically helpless to do much of anything, other than speak about it here and there. But even then, I have to be careful because of my location.
Yes,
So
you live in an awful place. The new Gomorrah.
yes, and I think I can be wrong, but I think that their plan for creating starvation, present a problem, inflict it on people, wait for them to freak out, make sure they don't know you're doing it. But once they're in the process of freaking out, then you can offer your solution that you just happen to have, even though you just happen to be the one that created the
Yes,
problem.
submit completely, and we'll let you have enough food to just survive.
Yeah, I really think that's what they're trying to. Honestly, I think that's what they're trying to do, and I think that they're trying. There are certain groups, again, tinfoil hat time. There's certain groups of people that wish for worldwide domination, whether it's one world government or a centralized banking system that's planet wide. Who cares
I
what you
believe the new
call it?
name for this, as it were, network of nefarious actors is the octopus.
You know what? Good enough for me. Hydra, fine, whatever.
Well, the octopus we can eat, though, right? If we
It's
are lucky, we will do to our octopus what the Greeks do to the little octopus.
fair enough. Fair enough. We'll all have sashimi. Okay, that's fine.
Taco is delicious.
All right. Yeah, I'm big on texture, so I actually don't like octopus, but in principle, I'm with you. Anyhow, yeah, I'm concerned that they are going to try for this, and there does seem, in Los Angeles anyway, there does seem to be a pliant mentality. I think a lot of people would go along with it here. I really do. I do. I don't know. I don't know how everything shakes out though, because I don't know how many
Well, I
people.
mean, what we if we want to go back historically, what happened in the Soviet Union after the famine of the 30s, both the 31, 33 famine in Kazakhstan and the 32, 33 famine in Ukraine. So not only got lots of dead farmers, but lots of people that are now on the farms don't want to be sticking around in the new collectivized system. So it's an easy way for them to herd them into the big factories as industrial workers.
I'm sorry, I missed the last sentence. Could you repeat that?
Right. Well, the survivors don't want to be hanging around on the countryside after the famine. So it's an easy way to just herd them into the new industrial factories.
But
As
yeah, that's the weird thing is that I don't want to be in the city, and yet going out to the countryside, I can see how my own mentality. I actually I loved the country. Going out to the country was one of the most wonderful experiences I've ever had, and I kind of understand how the small like I talked to so many people that ended up saying, yeah, I wish I was not here in this little town. I wish I was in Chicago, New York, LA, and so on. Strangely, I met a couple of people that specifically said they wanted to go to LA, which I thought was funny. And I didn't have the heart to tell them if only you knew how bad things really are, but whatever. The thing is that I get the impulse to go to the city because the city is where you're going to find more ambitious and industrious people. The problem is that once you get to the cities, it's like, what the hell do you do? What is there to do? I mean, it's a little bit
well, we
better.
used to have stuff going on in cities. I mean, now our cities are, horrible. But even I can remember when they were a little bit better. I mean, there used to be, intellectual stuff going on in places like San Francisco and New York. It wasn't all just degeneracy.
They don't know that though. The problem is that they see the superficial glitz, they see the glamour, and they think that it's like a lot of people, they don't understand the context that that we are all in right now. A lot of people, like the the media apparatus, corporate media, really does have a pretty good hold on the narrative currently. I can see that there are cracks. I can see that they're slipping here and there. I meet more and more people that simply do not trust the news. And I've heard that there are studies about how people are losing trust in institutions. Good. At the same time, when I went out to the countryside, people still basically believed the narrative on CNN, like on a basic level. So I think that there is still the impulse to go into the cities, and the problem with that is, in my opinion, plain and obvious. It's a trap. So I don't know. It's weird.
This
It's
is
like,
true. It is much easier to control urban populations than ones in the
yeah,
countryside.
and there's a huge buildup right now. You wouldn't believe. No, you would believe what I'm talking about. You were in Orange County just a couple years ago.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah, there is still that big push to make all of that high density housing here in Los Angeles. It hasn't stopped. They're still breaking ground on new buildings as I speak these words. So,
Where are the people coming from?
planet Earth, just
Well, I
everywhere
know that,
around.
but I mean, obviously, you got to be importing the people from somewhere, and it's not. I don't think most other parts of the U.S. So, like where I
Correct.
lived in Orange County, I noticed there was a huge number of people coming in from Eastern Asia,
Well,
mainland China, and Taiwan.
here's a thing worth considering. If you engineer a global famine, you will, just by an amazing coincidence, you will just happen to have a brilliant excuse to import a crapload of people into the northern hemisphere where there just happen to be a lot of farmers. I think that the immigration issues that we saw over the past decade are going to be dwarfed by what begins in 2023, if my model is correct, which I hope I'm wrong. Again, maybe I'm a paranoiac and a weirdo. That's completely possible. I have no idea. But if I'm right, then there is an artificial and engineered famine. There's a lot of people in the third world that will want to come here. And the Democrats, being the magnanimous and beautiful and benevolent people that they are going to throw the doors wide open and say, come and we will protect you. We will help you. And then we're going to
Yeah,
get a
well, I
lot of
mean,
hush pusts.
obviously, certain areas, large parts of sub-Saharan Africa, parts of the Middle East, are particularly vulnerable because they rely heavily on food imports. So, if places like the Netherlands, have their production cut to the point where they're no longer exporting huge amounts of food to these areas, you will see a problem. And we already seen, like in places like Egypt, huge increases in the price of grain related to the war in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, so now just imagine a bunch of Egyptians applying for amnesty or for refugee status. And imagine a bunch of
Right. So Egypt
Democrats
has like
saying,
100 million people. So like 20 million of them decide to come to the United States, they could like take over a couple of cities.
so basically Dearborn 2.0.
Yes, easily.
By the way, I happened to be in Oklahoma when they got their first Afghani refugees, which amusingly they were put up by some church. I don't remember what church, but it did
The
strike
Lutheran
me.
Church does a lot of that. The Lutherans Church tends to, in this country, be very paused despite its origin. So, particularly in Minnesota, but also Wisconsin, even in California, they've been since the 70s engaged in inviting the world to the U.S.
Okay, so sorry, I was typing something. I shouldn't have been doing
All
that.
right, so
Sorry.
Oklahoma, the Afghan refugees being put up by, we believe the Lutheran Church, but some church.
So many of them have been infiltrated. I went to a couple of churches out there, and like I saw it firsthand. So there are really 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 good things about Christianity that I wish were better understood, and I wish there was more emphasis on them.
Well, nobody reads anymore, so nobody reads the scripture either.
No, I know. I don't want to get into that. The thing is that it is funny that there happens to be massive infiltration in the churches, and at the same time, who is that guy on Twitter you were talking about? Something or other Krugman. What was his first name again?
Oh, Paul Krugman? He's an
Paul
idiot.
Krugman. Okay, so Mr. Paul, by an amazing coincidence, just happens to be of the same ethnicity as one of the billionaires that lives in Tulsa. And I went through Tulsa. I was there for like a couple of weeks. I saw with my own two eyes that a lot of the architecture, signage, posters, murals, one featuring, oh, who's that guy? Guthrie, something or other Guthrie? Guitar that says, this machine kills fascists or whatever.
Oh, Woody Guthrie,
Woody
the
Guthrie.
communist, yes, in the
Yeah.
30s.
Well, he's got himself a mural in downtown Tulsa that does in fact read, this machine kills fascists. So they're talking like verbiage. They have murals indicating violence along political lines.
Right, but at least when Woody Guthrie was alive, there were fascist governments in power in places like Italy. Now it's like just so archaic.
Yeah, we don't have anything like it's the whatever. Anyway, yeah, yes. Okay, so anyway, the point here is that there are moneyed interests that I believe have a mindset that is hostile to everything that I love, and those moneyed interests, they are in a lot of places that are not just coastal elite cities. They're also in middle America right now, actively mass importing the third world.
Yes,
So,
but this has been going on for a while.
oh no, I know. What I'm saying is that if you add a global famine, that gives them a beautiful excuse to say, "Oh, that's fantastic. Those doors that are half open right now, let's fling them open the windows, and start offering invites." I think that's what's going to be happening in the next couple of years. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying I think that's going to happen.
Perhaps, perhaps. But maybe if we could take a historical lesson. Perhaps if we are less, perhaps if we are because I don't think the newcomers now have the same type of motivation, for instance, that the Spanish conquistadors did. So if we were to put up, the type of resistance that the Apaches and some of the other indigenous peoples did, we might have more success simply because we're not going to be fighting against Cortez or Pizarro. We'll be fighting against, much weaker opponents.
Fair enough. There is okay, so I guess I'm gonna go with you on this, and I'm gonna backtrack on everything I've said with the idea that I just presented a crapload of doom and gloom, which is not good. And I do think that I ought to balance a little bit with something that, if, even if it's not positive in the formal sense, if nothing else, like it allows for good things, good possibilities. So yeah, a lot of the people that do come here, they're here for economic reasons, and many of them they rely on Gibbs. They rely on welfare, EBT, and so on. If you just cut all of that off, then they have no reason to be here at all. And if you incentivize them to leave, they will leave. So
Right.
I've heard people talk about this, and I don't know how viable it is, but it's interesting to contemplate. One could envision a situation in which the USD collapses to such a degree that it becomes functionally worthless, and then all of those beautiful EBT cards and the welfare checks and so on, they can't get you a whole hell of a lot if you assume that many of these people are only here for free food, and you deny them free food, and then you pay them to go back home. Then the possibility of a reshuffling in our favor, I refer to heritage Americans, founding stock or whatever. I'll throw out a hand to the Irish and to the Italians and to the Germans. I don't have a problem with that. Even to the Nords, even to the Nords. But yeah, like,
But the Lutherans need to stop being stupid.
yes, I concur. I totally concur. Middle America needs to settle the. They need to cool off, and they need to start self-reflecting. And I really think that they need to start thinking about. There's certain theological issues in Christianity that are being totally overlooked right now. It would be highly beneficial for Christians, to revisit what it means to believe in Christ and what it means for others to reject Christ. I think that most of Middle America is not thinking in those terms, but whatever.
Yeah. But so again, I can't predict the future because everything went haywire recently, and it's like stuff I never even imagined, being brought up to the front, stuff you'd have to be, stuff that if you were like in the 1960s and 70s in the heyday of the new wave of science fiction were to submit to DA or some other publisher, they would say, no, 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 this is just too far-fetched.
At this point, I've realized that hyperbole is impossible, and
Yes.
once hyperbole is no longer possible, like at that point in time, everything and anything is on the table. I don't like that. This is one of the reasons why I was saying that my mentality is one of calm resignation, because the people that are in control, they will lie and manipulate to a degree that is difficult for the average person to fathom. And like,
Well, no, I mean, you'll see something with your own eyes, and they'll tell you, no, your eyes are not correct.
no, I know,
What do
I
you mean my
know.
eyes are not correct? I see it.
They'll tell you that a particular medical procedure is completely safe, and then a year later they'll tell you, yeah, well, you're going to need to repeat it indefinitely. It's like, all right, fine, whatever. Who knows? I don't know anymore. They'll tell you that they are totally uninterested in stoking racial hatred, while at the same time attacking you along racial lines. They'll tell you there's no such thing as a race, and then they'll tell you that you're the wrong race. That you have racial privilege. It's like, you know what?
Mostly peaceful demonstrations.
Yeah, like, it's just nuts. All the things that are going on. Like, again, hyperbole is now impossible. Lying about things is such a norm that I think the average person, they don't even hear. They will hear things that happen now, and they will accept it on blind faith, and they will never compare against what they were told a week previous. So I'm genuinely concerned about that, and this is why my idea of calm resignation. I mean, in some sense, I guess my mentality is that of a person that is expecting to suffer greatly wishes that he could do something about it to prevent it or to preempt it, but it's not entirely, but it is partially dependent on the rest of
Yeah,
the
but I
population.
mean, as you just said, these people have no trouble going around naked, waving around their dick, and there's nobody saying, "Hey, the emperor is naked, man,"
Yeah, and I mean, I
and he
think,
should stop slapping me in the face with his dick.
yeah, I think that we're going to need to suffer for a while longer so that the rest of the population can play catch up. I actually think that's what needs to
Well, at this
happen.
point, I mean, things are collapsing so fast. I mean, like, catch up to what?
No, I know. That's the thing. Like, but okay, so
I mean, things. I'm over 50, and things were pretty bad in the 70s, but they were not this bad. That's how bad we've gotten. We're worse than the worst of the 70s now.
I know. Believe me, I know. And I think that because there are a lot of boomers and older Gen Xers that for some reason they still think it's the 70s or the 80s. I've seen this with my own two eyes. I
Yeah,
watch these people.
we're at the we've gotten all the bad things of the 70s. I don't know if we got any of the good things. Obviously, we compare Nixon, who was a pretty smart guy, to Biden, who's an idiot. The 70s were probably overall much better.
If you told me that I had a choice of living in the 70s or living now, I would pick the 70s hands down. Anyhow, I think that there needs to be a kind of a pulling of the veil, an apocalypse. I think there needs to be some kind of a critical mass of people that suffer things to such a degree that it's impossible for them to deny or to ignore. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think that I think it's necessary.
I don't know. It seems to me that there's a huge group of people that are willing that they're never going to change their mind. I mean, it's you know what I'm saying. I mean, if you can look at the stuff and they still don't understand that everything the government tells you is probably a lie. I'm not sure where you can go from there.
Well, the thing is that a lot of people they know they're being lied to, but they don't know what else to believe in. This is the problem with nihilism, is that if you don't have anything to believe in that is outside of the physical world, then you're just looking for an authority figure to tell you what to do. And so there's still the belief in authority. It's just the question is which authority figure. This is where a lot of people are.
Yeah, except the authorities that they're supposedly trusting are lying to them on the most basic of things. I
To
mean,
the
things you
quiet
can see with your
preach.
own eyes.
No, I know.
I mean, I see
I
stuff
agree.
like there's no statistical difference between races when it comes to crime. Well, there certainly is, and it doesn't do anybody of any race any good to deny that fact.
Well, those are social constructs or those are economic factors
Mugging is
also
not a
for
social construct; it's a
I
crime.
know, I know. I'm aware. But
I
I
know.
know you know and everyone else knows that that's what's going to be said. And a person that
But I
is
mean, it's not like some sort of sophisticated arguments anymore, like in the past when they were trying to hide stuff. Now it's just they just you see something that's pretty simple, and they just said no, that's not correct. And how can it not be correct? I see it how it works.
no, I know. This is seriously. I'm not joking. I actually think this is an issue with nihilism itself. People who genuinely don't believe in anything outside of physical reality. Because if you only believe in physical reality, you still need to have a basis for what is the proper thing to do and what is the improper thing to do. And that kind of mentality, because they don't believe in anything outside of physical reality, they're, they must look to physical reality for for guidelines, for rules, for models of behavior. So they have no choice but to look to authority figures. So they're stuck in a weird trap where they know they're being lied to by authority figures, but they must believe in authority figures because there is nothing else. It's a catch-22, and I don't see a way out of it. And I don't think they're even conscious. I do not think that these people are conscious of this.
Probably not. But I mean, I see just, blatant stuff. I mean, that even in the 80s, the most blue pill normie would think, no, you're just lying to me. Now stop it. I mean, the stuff I see is just ridiculous, and I don't ever remember it being this bad.
Well, buckle up. It's going to get a lot worse.
Well, I know, as I told you, where I work, I see the prices of food going up on a daily basis, and I see what goes into shortages on a daily basis.
And keep in mind that these increases in prices are 100% the fault of, drumrolls please, white males. That's you, buddy.
Well, I guess Biden technically is a white male, but the number of white males involved is a small percentage of us white males, and there are a considerable number of people, other groups involved as well.
I like that you're trying to pass the buck on your privilege. That's funny.
That's the buck on my privilege. I wish I had white privilege. You ever see that Beavis and Butthead clip?
I don't go outside.
They go to college for one day and they're told that they have white privilege. And they are asked, is this going to change how you're going to act? Oh, yes, most definitely. So then they barge into the cafeteria and say, we got white privilege. Stand aside. Give us that. Give us that. And then they steal a police car and the policeman's got to go. I don't know if you're just uneducated or what, but we have white privilege. You can't shoot us.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. So, like, I'm actually pleased that there are. Okay, so I spend a lot of time still. This was the case before, and it's still the case now. I spend a lot of time watching. I guess it would be the nominal alt-right or alt-light, the sort of the people that serve as gate. This is going back to 2016 thinking. I get it, but back in 2016, yeah, your Jordan
Laura
Petersons,
Southern.
Yeah, Lauren Southern, Tim Pool, these sorts of people. I listen to a lot of people that have that kind of, like, I don't like what the radical left is doing. I'm still basically a centrist, and I'm going to talk about.
Lindsay.
Yeah, James Lindsay would be a great example. I still listen to James Lindsay. He's put out a couple of videos. I keep meaning to watch them. I mean, once you know what's going on, you don't really need to spend too much time reading their articles. You kind of get the gist. Moving on. I've been noticing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the life is limited, so I don't have any time for the so-called alt-right. As you mentioned, they're mostly gatekeepers.
Yeah, and again, like, once you know the moves, it's like whatever. However, I still do keep an eye on them, and the reason for this is because though they are intended to serve as gatekeepers, and I believe that some of these people are paid off, by the way, I'm convinced that there are several that have major YouTube channels, and they are actually being actively paid by infiltrators to funnel certain people and certain ideas into their shows. And yeah, I know that some people will say, oh, you're being conspiracy theorist, and there are other people will say, oh, that's obvious, everyone knows that's happening. Whatever,
Hey,
anyway.
conspiracy theorists have a better record of being right than most people at this point.
Yeah. So anyhow, the thing is that there are certain ideas that are popping up a lot in these sort of gatekeeper-ish channels. I don't know what to call them, but these ones that are outside of regular normie sphere, but still in some contact with
The
normie sphere.
decoys, the decoys.
Yeah, I guess like
Well, they're certainly not moving people to complete understanding of,
no,
or
but
even any a small realistic understanding. They're still having the
they're
veil of the
right.
establishment.
Well, but do keep in mind that James Lindsay named Paul Krugman, so uh, there are elements of
Yeah, I know, but
latent.
you're never gonna get a straight, clear picture,
Correct,
even of
correct,
a small area, from a guy like James Lindsay.
correct.
You
Okay,
could get it from people that are considered beyond the pale, like Andy Nowicki,
right.
because those
So,
people don't care about the box and the rules anymore. They're just like, fuck it. I'm
okay,
going to say what I think is true.
right. Okay, so, but coming back to just the idea of watching and reading and doing what I can to pay attention to these, I don't know what to call them. Alt-right is not a good descriptor anymore. It hasn't been a good descriptor since 2018, so whatever. But whatever they're called, whatever the word for these people are, I have noticed that they are now moving toward becoming A, racially conscious, and B, upset at things like immigration policies. They're upset at language abuses and so on and so forth. And in some instances, I've seen this. Okay, this is not new. No one is going to anyone that has known about me for long enough will not find this surprising in the least because I've talked about it on more than one occasion. But yes, I do pay attention to what's going on in film, television, and comic books, and so I do keep tabs on that stuff. And yeah, it's a little paused. Don't care. Moving
Anything
on.
good come out in the last 20 years?
Nope.
No. I didn't miss anything.
Nope. I mean, like a couple little things here and there, but like in general, who cares? Anyway, moving on. Point is, even within some of these groups and communities, they're starting to get pissed off at things like race swapping, which I was not expecting. I was not expecting to hear the phrase race swapped used as a pejorative within proto. Like, it's these guys that I watch are just on the outer edge of normie sphere. Like, normies can still watch
Yeah,
this
well, the
stuff.
theory I hear is they have to make some concessions like that, or they're going to lose everything.
Right. And I think I I don't know. I'm not sure how much of this is completely out of the control of the powers that be, and how much of this is intentional. What do you call controlled opposition? Limited hangout. I think limited hangout is close to what I want. I think a fair amount of this is actually organic. I actually think that's the case because I have been talking to some people about some of these things, and they've been saying, like, there are people that are regular blokes that I've been speaking to. They are using the kinds of phrasing that I would have used back in 2016 or 2017. Regular people on the streets are seeing
Well, that
this.
was when you were just starting to see,
Yes,
wasn't it? Because I remember you were on the Luke Ford show, and
yes,
there were some events that I saw just raise the veil from your eyes on certain things.
yes,
It's
yes,
like, oh my God, these people I thought were crazy are right.
yes. I spent a lot of time trying to actively trying to preserve the worldview that I had grown up in back in the 1990s, only to realize, to
As a
my
liberal
shock and horror.
cosmopolitan.
Yeah, so the thing is that I think that there is an organic backlash that's manifesting now And I don't know how in control, because the thing is that if you attack, what is it? You can take the best behaved dog ever, good disposition, well raised, well trained. You kick that dog enough times, you're going to get a reaction. The reaction can be a lot of things. Maybe it runs away, maybe it barks, maybe it bites, maybe it does a jump. Who knows? The point is that the dog will react in one way or another. That's
I've
the
noticed
point.
that from a lot of people around my mother's age that on issues of immigration, on issues of interracial crime, they've moved, let's just say, far into the red pill area.
Yes, I'm seeing this now again in some normie areas. Like I got a family member who I think 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a conversation being held at one of my family members' houses, and a different family member, and this is during the 2020 race riots. So yeah, it was about 2 years ago. People were talking about the race riots and this, that, and the other thing. And I don't remember what it was that was said, but a different family member chimed in with, "It's not, what is it? White lives don't matter." That was what a different family member said, unprompted. So on the level of just like workaday people, they are primed and ready to talk about it. And I do think that there is. So even though, okay, so about 10-15 minutes ago, I spent a lot of time saying that, oh my gosh, there's going to be a famine. We're not going to be in control of anything. It's going to be a terrible thing. So this is me walking it back and saying, I don't know, maybe there's actually a lot of hope that we can hold on to, because there are people that are noticing this. I hope it's going to be a critical mass, critical number in the near future, because we're going to need to offer up some defense at some point. But holy cow, it does seem kind of overwhelming sometimes. So anyway.
Well, especially in the state of California. I mean, it almost seems, talking to my family still there, that particularly in the big cities, that the law enforcement is just disintegrated.
I'm sorry, I was looking at chat. Somebody mentioned
Oh, it
MTV.
seemed to me, talking to my family that's still in California, that the law enforcement, particularly for the big cities in California, is just completely disintegrated.
Basically, LAPD put out a statement in late 2020, or early 2021. I don't remember which. They were saying that if there is a home invasion, if someone breaks into your home, just cooperate, comply. Don't give them any reason to hurt you. Translation:
Have
if
you
you
seen
defend
the video
yourself.
from Brazil?
Which one?
The one where they're running over the motorcycle criminals?
Which one?
Well, there's the one I saw had like 30 clips of the guys would come on motorcycles with guns to try and rob guys in cars.
I've seen
The
so
guys in
many of
cars would
those.
just run over the motorcycle assholes.
Yeah, I've seen so many of those. The lesson that you get from every one of those is carry a gun. That's the
But
lesson
my
that you
favorite
get.
one, yeah, the car stops and the guy gets off the motorcycle with a gun to go rob him, and the guy in the car shoots him 5 times as he comes to
Yeah,
the window.
that was the one in the garage.
It wasn't in a garage; it was like on the middle of a street.
Oh, okay, fair. This is what I mean. Brazil is a war zone. Brazil is a war zone. Anyway, I think that because
Yeah, but we
like
are headed in many ways towards becoming Brazil of the North.
LA is Brazil.
So,
Like it's actually just Brazil.
how's your Portuguese?
What's that?
You speak Portuguese?
Well, here it's just regular Spanish.
Oh, okay.
And whatever. Anyway, okay. I don't want to think about it. But yeah, I was thinking about the movie Blade Runner the other day, and how in the movie Blade Runner it was supposed to be this big, like if you watch the movie, there's like this Turkic guy that he hangs out with for a minute. They're speaking, weird combinations of language. Infamously, one of the languages is Hungarian. There's like the Chinese guy that does the eyeball stuff, and then there's all this weird Japanese iconography, katakana everywhere. So you just have like this giant mess of weird peoples and cultures coming together in this bizarro, neon lit, fantastic, weird thing. And in the context of a dystopian movie, it's completely fine because you're like, wow, what a freak show, dude. And I realized like a year or two ago, actually, that's where I live. I actually live in Blade Runner. We don't have off world travel, but we do basically live in Blade Runner right now.
Well, there's more optimism in the book. Do android dream of electric sheep?
It's been a long time since I've read the book.
Yeah. Well, I think you should be able to get it at your local library unless they've gotten rid of all the books yet.
The library is where there's a giant homeless camp, so I'm not inclined to go to the library.
Oh.
If anything, I would just pick up a copy at a used
You don't
bookstore.
have mean librarians like we do here.
Well, but if
Here,
you,
people tried that old Mexican woman be beating them with sticks all day.
yeah, if a homeless person did anything at all, and you put up any opposition to anything that they're doing, you will be told to leave the person alone. The end. The only
No,
thing that
I saw
they,
that from my union had a thing. They got three people. They got their jobs back, but they had been fired because they attempted to confront shoplifters.
yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like, it's genuinely that bad here, but like formally. I've hit the point where I've got a, it's not the coolest thing in the world, but I got myself a cute little buck knife. And this thing, is, yeah, it's basically a pocket razor blade or whatever. If I used this thing in a defensive capacity, forget it, dude. I would be immediately prosecuted. So I have myself basic self defense, and if for any reason I were to defend myself, yeah, I'm the one that's going to get prosecuted. That's exactly how bad it is here in LA. Whatever. Anyway, I think that I think normie sphere is starting to catch on. I just don't know I don't know what's going to come after any of this. I still don't know. Because, what is it, like, there's the big eschaton of 2030. Apparently that's when they want to have their little revolution or whatever. So they have to build up to that. So between now and 2030, they have to figure out some way to create. And yes, I know that I'm basically I'm playing by their playbook, or I'm looking at their playbook, and then forming plans against the playbook of people that don't like me, and that's not good. And I do know that. Whatever. Anyway, the thing is, if they, assuming that they are going to try to make the revolution happen by 2030, I think they need to have a couple of false starts. So I think that's actually why they're doing all of the, the economic stuff, the famine stuff, and so on. I think they're trying to get ahead of the inevitable backlash by classifying everyone as a white supremacist or a white nationalist. So
Uh,
it's weird because there is pushback coming from normie sphere. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
well, of course, because almost all white, as well as a fairly significant chunk, but I couldn't like quantify it, of Asians and Hispanics. They're not real happy with the lack of any enforcement against black crime.
Well, but now they're being actively discriminated against. And if they object to it, they get attacked. So it went from being like, because back in when I first started talking about some of this stuff in 2016, people would laugh at me.
Who,
And they would,
Duvid?
what's that?
Duvid laughed at you?
Yeah, that's right. No, I would talk with people out on the streets, and they would tell me that I was being silly, or I was being, I was putting too much emphasis on it, or whatever. Now, everything that I was talking about back in 2016, like, it's become so overwhelming that it's just background chatter. Everyone talks about the stuff that I was talking about back in 2016. It's just a part of the background chatter.
Yeah, because things got really bad in the last 6 years. Not that they weren't bad in 2016, but now they're so ridiculously bad. As I said, it's hard to believe there's anybody that looks at this stuff and
Yeah, so
still believes the lies.
I want to believe that there is I want to believe that there is a critical mass that is going to happen. And I don't know. For some reason, I'm running this around in my head a lot right now, and I'm just trying to figure out, in my own head, a path forward. Again, assuming that there is the 2030 eschaton, the great big revolution, the reset, and whatever, and assuming they want to do all of their false starts. That means that they're going to have to get a combination of compliance from the middle, or sufficient.
Well, if we go back to the old communist model, the way they got compliance from the middle was to terrify them by taking off the top. So the
Right.
top 5% kulaks end up in special settlements north of the Arctic Circle, and then
Right.
the middle says, you know what, I really don't want to go to the special settlement. What do you need me to
Right.
do?
Right. I think this is actually why they're pushing gun control so hard. In my own head, the way that I phrase it is they want you defenseless. Ask yourself why. And I think that the only people that are fighting for gun rights are, I mean, it's both good and bad, but they are zealots. And I do like that someone is out there talking about it, but they're kind of fringe by normie standards, and they're not exactly accessible to the average person on the street, and I do get that. So we're caught in this weird thing where, what you're talking about with sending people to gulags, the only thing, in my opinion, keeping people from being flung into gulags is the capacity for self-defense. I actually think that's the case, as crazy as that sounds. So, like, rather, let me...
Right, we're still in like 1917, not 1937 yet.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're even in 1917. I think we're still in like 1910. I don't think we've seen...
Wow, things are moving fast, though.
Well, I mean, okay, you know what? Okay, so...
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't predict the future because things just go crazy and haywire. But
yeah,
if a year from now, people are having raids by feds to confiscate their formerly legal guns, I'm not going to be too surprised.
I don't see that as being unrealistic. I don't. And I think that a lot of people are going to look at it and say, yeah, well, it was his fault for breaking the law. Of course, the fact that the law gets changed arbitrarily and it's enforced arbitrarily will be totally lost on the average person. but I mean, it does look like that's the direction they want to push things, and it does look as though they're making headway into that. So it's almost like there's this weird game, like a racing game. Like, how fast can they move before people start to really notice and process what's going on? I think what they're, I mean, I've been thinking about this since like 2012 or whatever. David Icke. I was thinking about this when David Icke was talking about like whatever the hell he was, the lizard people that control banks or something. He was saying that the totalitarian two-step, that's what he called it. He was saying that the totalitarian two-step has been accelerated such that now it looks like a mad dash, a sprint to the finish line. And I think there is something to that, because the things that these people are doing, there is an air of desperation about them. And I think that's a good thing on a net level, because that suggests that their plans are really brittle and it will be easy to deal with them. In the final analysis, we will be fine. And, speaking outside of my own lifespan, we are going to be fine. Unfortunately, I might not live to see when everything is fine once again, which kind of sucks.
Well, there's always a statement, I'm not sure if you remember, but one of the ministers of the independent Croatian state during the Second World War came over to the United States, and Yugoslav communists tried to extradite him, and the U.S. said fuck off. And then later in the 80s, they extradited him after the rise of Ani into power in the U.S. So he was on trial in Yugoslavia in the last days of Yugoslavia. And the judge said to him, Mr. Artukovic, you will never live to see your precious independent Croatia again. And he said, that is probably true, but you will.
See, that I like that. I like that mentality. And that's what I'm trying to hold on to as much as I can. Like, I do what I can to try to think outside of my own lifespan, because whenever I think about what's going to happen within the, because by statistics, what is it, 75 for males or something, like mid to late 70s for males right now. I'm just a little over middle aged, just a touch. So
Me too, just a little bit.
yeah. So it's entirely possible that within the remaining couple of decades that I've got, I won't see the end of all of this. I mean, 2030 is only 8 years, 7.5 years away. And that's when I think they are projecting their big push. I really think that's the case. So that means I've got, what, 8 years to prepare for whatever the hell it is that they want to unleash, and then I got to survive that, and then I'm still going to have another 20 years, but it'll be another 20 years as like a 60, 70, 80-year-old man. And it's like, jeez, what a pain in the ass. I don't want to have to deal with it, at that age, but I guess I don't really have a choice. Anyhow, if I just assume in my own head that victory is assured, it's just that it will happen after I die, then it is actually, it's much easier to deal with. So that's what I generally hang on to. Anyway, I think that I think that the number of regular people that are catching on is growing in number. I don't like the phrase Great Awakening because I think it's bullcrap. I think that the average person is not going to, quote, awaken, but I do think that there is a critical mass of high agency people that needs to be reached before anything can be done. So I think that there's like a race. Yeah, I guess that's the easiest way to think of it. There's a race between the people who are nefarious, bad actors who want to impose their will on others through a control grid, on the one hand, and on the other hand, high agency people that are genuinely good that would offer up resistance to these nefarious people. So it's a race to see, can the control grid manifest before a critical mass of high agency people catch on? I'm starting to think that that's the
Yeah, it
real
does seem to be that that's
game.
what they're trying to figure out what the tipping point is. But it seems to me they've decided to get to the where they need to be. They've put the fire up, so the frog is boiling much faster.
Well, yeah, they need to inject as much fear as possible, and I will admit that the economic thing has been on my mind a lot, and like anything you can do. Okay, so I've noticed that one of the key factors of the people who are nefarious um, factors, indicators, signs, flags. If you look at the things that are going on, there will be fingerprints. There will be some kind of a sign, a signature of some sort that these people, these nefarious actors, are involved. And in my opinion, one of the big things is an emphasis on fear. So if you are getting upset at a narrative that induces fear in you for one reason or another, it can be for any reason. And I'm willing to admit I do fall victim to this now and again myself. Earlier today, I was pacing back and forth in my own freaking living room like an idiot, thinking about what I was going to do in the event of a possible economic collapse and an inability to feed myself. So I'm not saying that I'm above it. I'm not saying that I'm immune or whatever. Like, I know that certain things are happening, and that does not ameliorate me, doesn't make me immune. Anyway, even still, like, but I did notice that fear. What does that do? It really is the mind killer. When you're
You know,
afraid.
to paralyze you so you don't take any actions.
Exactly. When I was talking about calm resignation on my part of that really is because of a combination of excessive fear and a feeling of powerlessness. These nefarious actors, they need to project power, and they need to induce fear so that you will become compliant and docile.
Yeah,
So,
but that only works when people still have something to lose. At this point, it's getting to the point where once people are already on rock bottom, and there's only one way to go, and that's up.
forward escape, yeah. And I will admit, I'm really close to that right now. I do not have a lot to lose, but there are a couple of things in my life where, yeah, sure, if I lost certain things that I've it's not that I possess them per se, but there are certain elements of my life that if they were to disappear, you know, I wouldn't have anything at all. There's already not much for me to defend. So it's like, well, okay, if if you take away everything from me, then there's nothing holding me back from doing anything. And obviously I'm a soft-spoken, well-meaning. I'm a good person. I'm not going outside. I'm not definitely not doing anything. But the thing is that, so just imagine, so I'm capable of,
Yeah, but you're like the entire population of Germany was in the 1920s, and then something happened to piss them off.
exactly, exactly,
I'm not going to get into the details
exactly,
of what happened in Weimar Germany, but there was a
yes,
whole tens of millions of very calm, otherwise
exactly,
rational, reasonable people that all of a sudden
exactly,
just said, "Fuck it."
exactly. I'm capable of self-restraint. I'm capable of self-reflection. I'm capable of projecting into the future the consequences of my actions and saying to myself, this is a good thing and that is a bad thing. Hurting people is wrong. Causing suffering is wrong, and I will not do X or Y thing because it will induce suffering. So I'm capable of doing those things. On the other hand, the things that I am experiencing are also being experienced by millions of people right now. So it's like, well, geez, if this is happening, if millions of people are going through the exact same things that I went through back in 2017, right now, can you imagine millions of, I don't want to say of me because it's not really the case, but just millions of people of a similar background to myself and a similar intelligence level, assuming that I'm, just a touch, a hair over baseline, because that's what actually matters in my opinion. It's not the people of 90 to 105 IQ. It's actually the people of like 115 and up. That's what I think is the critical mass that needs to happen. Imagine, hundreds of thousands, millions of 115 and up IQ people catching all of this and looking into the future.
Except I think, well, I'm kind of going to say, I think at least among whites, this is where you have the largest number of people with that IQ. People that so you have a lot of white people, I think, in the 115 to 130 IQ range that are just they convince themselves, they lied to themselves in enough sophisticated enough way that they live with the illusion, even though their intelligence suggests that they should see through it.
For people that are lefties, yes. However, I think that centrists are not going to be as inclined. I'm a centrist. I think I'm like a single, in my own head anyway, I'm a single tick to the right, but I'm basically a centrist. I was a.
You would have been a liberal just 40 years ago.
I was.
He wouldn't have to change any of your positions. I mean, exactly the thing that the Overton window shifted on you.
Yes, the only difference between myself in the 90s and myself now is that I've adopted a defensive posture because I've been attacked my entire life, and it's gotten worse over the past decade. So, like, I'm still, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, I do count myself as being basically a latent liberal. Extremely tolerant. I'm willing to let a lot of things go. Blah 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 blah. Novelty seeking and all this good jazz. And I think that because I've seen what happens, the repercussions of my mindset, I'm less inclined to be so loosey-goosey, so laissez-faire. So the only difference between me in the 90s and me now is that now I say to myself, well, I got to be careful about what I tolerate because I'm going to be taken advantage of.
Right, that seemed to have been the problem.
Yeah.
We thought we had an agreement that in exchange for toleration and acceptance that certain standards would be met, and
there's no
they
reciprocation.
weren't.
There's no reciprocation.
Right.
And once you understand that there's never going to be any reciprocation, then all bets are off. There is no mask anymore. There are no gloves anymore.
It's like somebody show up at your house and you invite them in for coffee and then they rob you. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, they've done a bit more than just rob us, but yeah. Yeah.
With a gun. Well, I mean, you know what I'm saying. I don't want the metaphor to get too complicated, right?
No, but I get it. I know exactly what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. That's completely what's going on. And again, my view is that the real battle right now is in the robbers, the nefarious robbers, trying to gaslight us into saying, but you invited us in, you wanted this to happen, you accepted this is just what's happening.
Your skirt was too short.
Yeah. You were wearing that hat, you deserved it.
All right. Yeah, it literally is to that. Did you see Google's most wanted frog? Because this is the reason why they don't share food in Scandinavia with strangers.
Based.
Um, I'm not sure if that's the origin or not, but it might possibly be. Um, I've been
There's
reading a lot
actually
of Swedish novels recently, so I'm trying to get a. Sweden was a fascinating society before the the massive influx of immigrants.
there's a concept that I heard about that I think is worth consideration, which is you only break bread with your own, and I do think that because I know what
Yeah, but what is
Google's.
your own? I mean, obviously, it extends
Yeah,
beyond immediate family. So, is it just your own ethnic group? Is it related ethnic groups? Is
I
it
don't know what that is yet. I don't know what that is yet because like for
right? So we don't know
example,
the boundaries. So, I mean,
yeah,
it seemed to me, like obviously, if it's just my family, even if it's an extended family, that seems pretty narrow. If it's just in my ethnic group, it's still, I mean, just Germans from Russia. There are millions of us, but there's still not a lot of people. And then, like all people of ethnic German, that's big.
I
But I mean,
know,
why? But why would I exclude like English people or other European Americans who
I
are
know.
pretty close? I mean, what's the difference between a Dutch American and a German American at this point?
So here's an example from my own world. I go to a church that just happens to have a crap load of Russians in it, and it occurred to me just the other week. I was like, wait a minute, I'm like one of a couple of Anglos here, and granted, like nobody cares, like whatever. We're all there. We're just going to church. Like who cares? But at the same time, like in the back of my head, I was like, actually, I'm the odd man out here. You know, it's interesting. It is interesting. I was thinking to myself that, like, if I could find an Orthodox church that was more Anglo-centric, I would prefer that. Good luck in LA. Who freaking knows where that is? But whatever. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Like, finding your own, it's difficult. It's really, really, really hard in LA. And even if I went to another part of the country, I don't know what it would look like because I do have certain criteria that I'm looking for. And even if I went to an
I
area
mean,
with
I think it's because we, for a number of reasons historically, but we just can't like emulate, for instance, the Jewish model and say, okay, we're only going to eat certain foods with these certain people who are closely related to us in an
yeah,
ethno-racial way.
yeah,
Because as you just said, I mean, we haven't defined even how far ethnically we would go out. So is a recent immigrant from Russia considered to be part of, the Anglo-American, you know,
I know.
ethnos close enough, or how do we define it? So, I mean, yeah, we're in a worse position than more well-defined
Yeah.
ethnos.
I think that there's going to be an element of regionalism that pops up over time. And I do think that there's a weird thing that I did hear about, and I think it's worth consideration, which is that if you look at the best friends in a school, like who hangs out with who the most or whatever,
Mhm.
there tends to be a genetic similarity for whatever reason. I have no idea why, but there tends to be a genetic similarity, and I
Well, I'm
have
guessing
noticed.
because there's correlation, at least maybe some. I don't know what degree it's causation. There's some causation between that and other features. So I mean, obviously, these things all kind of go together in what would the Russians call ethnos theory, where you have groups that are combinations of biological and cultural features.
Yeah, so I think that there is a self-sorting happening in the country right now, and I don't know, but I think that you would probably end up with clusterings of ethnicities, I think. So, like here in Los Angeles, for example, there's some sections of the city that are just Mexican. There's some sections of the city that are overwhelmingly Middle Eastern, and others that are overwhelmingly Indian. There's some that are going to be Filipino. There are others that are going to be Chinese. You know, you do end up with a clustering on a larger level.
In urban areas, yes.
Yeah, but because there is so much migration internally within the United States right now, I think, because I'm looking at leaving LA at some point. I've been
That's
saying
because
this
there's
for
no
years.
Anglo town left in
Yeah,
LA.
exactly. That's the thing. Is that
Every other ethnic group is represented.
yeah? Well, no, I went out to when I was in the Midwest. I went out to this little itty bitty town, an itty bitty town, so small that like you would look out and the nearest house was like a quarter mile away.
That's like where I lived in Arizona. It had 300 people, and it
Yes,
was a huge land area. This
yes. So
township.
I went to a place like that, and the local gas station was being manned by an Indian guy with an Indian accent.
Were you in Texas?
I was in Oklahoma.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
close.
So
Uh,
the thing is that the when you say there are no Anglo towns, like no, that's real. They don't
no, I
like
said there was
it's
no Anglo section of Los Angeles. There was like a Koreatown, and there's a
well, there were
Japantown.
no, but there are sections of LA where you can actually still see the remnants of traditional
Yeah,
English
remnant. That's a good
architecture.
word to use.
Yeah, well, the thing is that there used to be a lot of Anglos. There are
Yeah, it
places.
used to be. I remember in the 80s, but we're talking 40 years ago.
No, I know. Like there's a bar that I go to, which used to be an English bar, and the name reflects it. The architecture reflects it. Everything on the interior reflects what it used to be. And now, when you go there, it is
La
not.
Cantina
Yeah, it's not an English bar anymore.
and
So,
Mexicano.
well, I mean the neighborhood. There's still a lot of white people there, but it's just like proportionally there are more white people there. But it's just in terms of proportions. That's it. You know, and nothing against anything. Just that's just how it is. But yeah, anyway, with the filtering of the country right now, I don't know. Like the question of what are the boundaries of group identity? I think we are in uh, the stages of that actually being a real question that people are going to have to answer,
Well, I agree. I mean, that's
and I
why
don't
I've
know what it
been
is.
trying to look at it. It seems to me that we're in the middle of it because a lot of ethnogenesis result from groups going under extreme trauma, like the Afrikaners and the Long Trek and then the two Boer Wars after that. All right, so we're at the point where white Americans are under pressure, but the degree to which it's unified us into a single ethnic group is still questionable. We're still in the process, as far as I can see.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure coming from various groups to encourage us to not identify along racial lines. So they want to, on the one hand, encourage people to think along racial lines when they are attacking whites. And at the same time, the moment whites defend themselves, suddenly race is no longer, it no longer exists. It's not extant. So
Yeah, but I
we're
mean, this is easy to do because there's already been a racialized consciousness among non-white groups that goes back quite some time in the U.S., whereas there really hasn't been any racial consciousness among whites for quite some time. It's all been anti-racial, at least since the Second World War.
But only for whites. So,
Pretty much,
like,
yes.
yeah, white
Well,
people,
I'm not disagreeing with it, but I'm saying that's why it fits in easily because
yeah,
already black people already think of themselves as black in a way that's not just superficial skin color,
capital B
whereas
black,
white people do not. We
capital
have
B
been
black,
what?
capital B black.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
as an ethnicity.
So the okay, this is actually a thing that I haven't thought about in like a week or two, but I wanna just run it through my head once more. Um, White people exist when we are being attacked. We do not exist when we are defending ourselves.
Schrodinger's white dude.
Yes, and so anytime a white person tries to defend himself, he will be told that race is not real. Anytime a white person is being attacked, race is real. For a white person that is assuming that his attacker is arguing in good faith, this makes it impossible for the white person to defend himself. The only way to defend yourself is to first assume that the person that is attacking you is not operating in good faith at all. That is the only way that you can defend yourself against such a person. And the average white person in America does not have that in their head. They still believe in academia and media and government. They still trust all of these institutions. And so, for that reason, the assertion that whiteness doesn't exist, the average white person still believes that. I see this in my own life all the time. So I don't
Right.
know. I don't know how
Well,
that
I would
gets
say the
resolved.
question for us is not whether we exist or not, but how fast it will take for us to become a unified group more than just sharing, the being persecuted for for who we are. You see what I'm saying? There has to be something more than that. We have to develop to unify around, and we've been slow on that given the pressure.
I don't know what is. I don't know. And I agree. And because like I do think that there is something to the concept of like a biospirit. I guess I don't know. Like
There is, but these biospirits are formed historically. So
yeah,
historically, at this junction, right, what we have is we don't have anything positive to unify around that we're creating. As far as we're getting unified, it's a negative reaction and defense because we're being attacked.
yeah, and that's not enough at all.
That's not enough to survive. I mean, maybe that's enough to delay extinction till you can get something positive, but you need more than that. There, I mean, well, I guess what I'm saying is that the we when we think of ourselves as a group, whatever you want to call it, heritage Americans, you want to call it Americana. I think we probably need something better than just white, but I mean that's really just an aesthetic choice. It has to be more than just well these other people who are not us are attacking us. It has to be well we have this that is positive in common.
I actually agree completely. That's
Yeah.
been a major problem for me recently. Like, yeah, because there are people that I know that are they're intelligent, they're fun to be around and chit chat with, and so on. And we have similar genetic codes. And I know for a fact that if I talked about any of the things that I talk about on, in spheres such as this one that I'm in right now, these people that I know, they would have no idea what to make of it, and many of them would say, "OMG, you are a fascist? Oh no!" And it's like, dude, come on, man. And so it's frustrating. And like, they're decent people, and like, they don't mean any ill. You know, they have no heart or no hate in their heart. Like, fine. And it's weird because like they don't. They the best that they can muster, because most of these people are. I mean, most people in Los Angeles are nihilists, but most of these people are also nihilists. The best that they can do is, I just don't want to be a bad person. I don't want to cause suffering. Like, that's the best they can do. You know, that's not enough for an identity. That's not enough to, that's enough to get by. That's it.
I think there can be something there because unfortunately the video it was on is no longer in existence because it was done by Andy Nowicki. But he came and saw me live at the American Historical Society of Germans from Russia speak. And then he interviewed me about it. But he said he was very white-pilled by the fact that there were still Americans of European ancestry holding on to old world culture as positive features, right? Now, obviously, we can't revive all old world culture, and the combinations we do it in the U.S. will be different than in Europe, and we'll probably create some new things. But the basic idea is that, obviously, as I said, we need to have positive commonalities. It can't just be that our commonality is that we're being persecuted or attacked or however, whichever word you want, put under pressure by other groups. There has to be something within the group that we think is positive, and we want to keep it going. Right, these features because they're good in themselves and they're ours.
I have noticed that I sexually identify as a Scot. So it's sort of funny that, like, yeah, and even Tom Kaczynski was talking about this a couple of years ago. He was saying something about how there would need to inevitably be a sense of identity among white Americans, and it was his opinion, Tom's opinion, that it would probably end up being ethnic based on where you came from in Europe, probably. And to a large degree, I concur. I have noticed that I generally get along with Anglo-Saxons the best, followed by Nords and Germans. That's just the way that it is. So, you know, tell me that I don't have a choice. I have to pick between, you know, these peoples or those peoples. I'm just going to go to a clustering of where hopefully I find a lot of Anglos. But again, like, if it came to it, I'm completely fine with the other Northern Europeans. Like, that's fine. I mean, I don't know about the French, but
Right, but I think part of the problem though is that if you get to the point where the old term literally was deracination, is that you get to the point where white Americans today basically there is no content. You know what I'm saying? The only thing that they have that makes them white, other than genetics, is they're being attacked for it. But there isn't a positive cultural positive
well, that's what they're trying for.
character
Yeah,
to it.
that's the nefarious people are trying for that, and I do think that to a large degree, you know, I don't like saying it. I'm saying that I do think that to a large degree they have been successful. They have taken away our sense of identity. I mean, the average, like, what is it, Cape shit people? They
Right, which is horrible.
exactly, and it's like, dude, like,
Right. So
these
oh,
Tony Stark, like, that's your freaking role model? Are you kidding me?
I mean, that's not. I mean, I. That's not when I say a positive culture and positive, uh, you know, Weltanschauung, perhaps worldview. That's not what I'm talking. I'm talking of, even if it's new stuff, it will have to ultimately be derived, I think, from our European roots. I mean, that we're not coming up with Marvel superheroes. This is not the answer.
No, it's
Obviously,
yeah.
because as you know, the people doing Marvel superheroes are not originally from Europe.
Yes, I understand that now more than ever, and but I have noticed. So like, there's a peculiar thing that has popped up recently in film and television and comic books and video games where the nefarious people, they have overplayed their hand in such a way that now, for example, did you hear about, and you probably didn't, and you're not missing anything, some studio, I don't remember which one, I think it was Warner Brothers. Yeah, it had to have been Warner Brothers. They filmed a new Batgirl movie. More cape shit, great. And they did the usual thing. It's got to be a strong, independent woman, and she can't be white, so obviously she has to be black. And you can go through all of the normal nonsense. It's just normal woke propaganda. And apparently, this is what I've been told. Or this is what I've heard, rather, because through the gossip channels, apparently, the movie tested so poorly that Warner Brothers has decided to not release it at all, not even on streaming.
Yeah, because the Chinese
So,
don't like those types of movies.
yeah, apparently they really hate it. So
What, I want an American movie. We're the white people.
yeah. We wanted Top Gun, man. What are you talking about? So the studio, they basically junked $70 million. So there is a backlash of some sort. I don't know what happens at this point because the public is not going to the movies. They're not watching TV shows. They're not buying video games as much. They still do. I'm not saying that
Because all those things suck now.
correct. And there is so speaking of high agency people catching on, James Lindsay made a note that Gramsci and oh, son of a gun, the guy who wrote the repressive tolerance essay, Marcuse, and several other of the Frankfurt School types. James Lindsay lamented that they all, by an amazing coincidence, happened to have the same history amongst them. They happened to be of an ethnicity that is not mine.
Well, the Frankfurt people were. Gramsci, I'm pretty sure, was Italian, though. He was in the Italian Communist Party. And Italy and France, unlike Germany, Hungary, Russia, Great Britain, United States, South Africa, tended to have nationals rather than this other group in their Communist Party leadership.
Okay, but the thing is that James Lindsay made note of this verbally, and he was lamenting it. That's the point here. And there are people, I'm sure, someone, somewhere, is starting to take note of the people that are producing these movies and these video games and these comic books and these television shows. And so I don't know, man. I keep thinking in terms of people engaging in pattern recognition. That's really my big thing right now. I
don't know if it's possible. I can't tell you the number of people on Twitter that tell me outright that there were never any Jewish communists in the Soviet government.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why people say
I'm like, no. And like they'll go to it and they'll do things like they'll say, Matvey Berman's mother, we don't know her nationality. We just know the father was Jewish, and the mother has to be Jewish for him to be a Jew. It said on a Soviet document he was Jewish. That makes him Jewish.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, but speaking of coming back to, because that was a big tirade of nonsense. coming back to the concept of a positive identity based on something rather than a positive identity rather than a negative identity, and one that is
Yes,
based
that's a
on
much better way to live.
yeah. I think that there is a rejection of cape shit going on right now. There's a rejection of video games going on right now.
Well, the Cape shit is obviously not ours. The Cape shit belongs to that other group.
Well, yeah, well, yeah, very much so. Especially when you consider that the people that were instrumental in the comic book industry in its very inception, they were themselves a part of that group. So, like, it's not ours in any sense. I was shocked when I realized that Superman was actually a dig at us. Hashtag Lex Luthor did nothing wrong. I think that there's a real possibility for art that is ours to be made now that will actually be like genuinely positive. That people will say, "Yeah, I agree with that. I'm
Oh,
with
oh,
that."
definitely.
Yeah, I think we're poised for a kind of micro renaissance. I really think that.
There definitely is a huge scope for legitimate art, music, and literature to come from European Americans. And did you see that article that they weren't taking novels from to publish from any white men anymore at any of the major publishers in the United States?
I heard about
So in a
that.
way, this is kind of a liberation because they're no longer now tied to the publishers with their requirements that you can do what you couldn't do before in terms of types of themes and character development and whatnot. I mean, because let's face it, even like well, especially high literature, has been crap along with the Cape shit for a long time.
Yeah, what is it?
I mean, what is it? Was it Portnoy's Complaint in 1969? You have a book that's about adolescent masturbation. I mean, come on, this is not literature.
One of my favorites is still Cormac McCarthy. I don't care what anyone says. The fact that he will not use quotation marks just pisses me off no end.
Ah, I didn't realize he didn't use quotation marks. I'll have to go look at his work again.
Yeah, I was reading one of his books. I don't remember. Oh, The Road. I was reading The Road, and I was reading a conversation, and out of no, like he just had just line after line after line. Sometimes it was a description. Sometimes it was a character uttering a sentence, and you would have to try to figure out. You'd have to guess what the fuck is going on. And something about that, I was like, you know what? Go fuck yourself, Cormac. Just tell us what the hell is going on. Don't give us a bunch of words and expect us to reverse engineer what the hell it was you wanted to do with it.
But I want to put in another because he's dead now. But I mean, and I only get his books through the library, so his estate, if he has one.
Yeah.
Now, about Henning Mankell, as I said, kind of started the 20 years ago the Scandinavian noir.
Yeah.
But if you read his books, even though he's quite liberal, leftist, I don't know, social democrat, it's obvious that his books are coming from the point of view of somebody who's Swedish. These are books that take place in Sweden about Swedish people and about Swedish problems. So there's a definite national and in the sense of ethnic component there. We need to have American writers like that.
I'm
We
actually,
don't
I'm,
now.
I think that's a great. I would love to see that. I would love to see either a book or a movie or something or a short that's just about like an American going through. Like there was a guy that I was talking to who is a nationalist, and he was describing a possible story, and I couldn't help but think to myself, I wish that guy just had money to make these things. It'd be fantastic. Because I mean, yeah, like that would just be great. That would be so great. Oh, I wish that happened in America. I think the closest we have right now is Murdoch. Murdoch. It's funny.
Well, there are people out there. The publishers won't publish them, but I mean, despite demographic changes, there's still young white men writing about what it means to be a young white man in America today.
Really?
Yes, they're just not being published, but they're writing it.
Where are these books?
Well, they're not being published, but they're being sent in and rejected.
I guess you're right.
There are some small publishers, I mean, that publish stuff, but yeah, the big ones won't publish stuff. But there are people with talent. Say, I mean, if 20 years ago you could have had books about Sweden, which is not a very big country, right? And when you read these books, everything in it is Swedish in an ethnic sense. That these books sold tens of millions of copies and were translated into 40 different languages. There certainly should be a market, if nothing else, among our own people for works about us.
I think you're right. It's
Oh, I know I'm
pretty
right. It's just it's just the big corporations aren't creating this type of
Yeah.
or facilitating this type of literature. I'm going to stick with literature because I don't know very much about other forms of art, but I know a little bit about literature because I like to read.
Yeah. It's getting late, by the way. Where
Oh
I am,
yes,
so
yes.
I'm gonna have to let out. I'm
All
I'm
right, and
announcing
I
this
will
now.
end this, but I'll leave it up because I don't think anything was terribly offensive here. So,
I don't think so, but I wanted to
and,
let you know that.
and I can't get any lower status than the grocery guy anyway.
Yeah, hey,
Maybe I'll write a novel what it means to be the only guy at working at the grocery store with a PhD.
yeah, yeah, I'm not far off from that, to be honest.
It'll be a bestseller.
There you go. I would read it.
All right, good to talk to you again.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
know if you're ever coming out this way east into
Well,
the heart of Aztlan.
yeah, it's possible that I'm going to be leaving LA this year. I'll find out in a bit. So, if that is the case, I don't. Well, I don't know because I'm. If it's possible, I kind of want to go up to the Pacific Northwest and see what it's like up there because I happen to know that there's a fair number of like Anglos and Celts that live up in the Pacific Northwest. So if that's the case, I would like to at least check it out just to see what it's like out there. And if that's the case, then yeah.
You know, it used to be, but you've got a lot of
I know.
the Antifa type guys in
I
Portland and
know.
Seattle now. So
No, I know. I
uh,
know.
even though the population is still largely Anglo, a lot of these Anglos in the urban areas are not the type of Anglos you want to be associating with.
No, I know. It's
They
it's
they got they
unfortunate.
got they got the sickle and hammer tattoos and the dyed hair and
You know, it's very upsetting that because the the only way that the woke and the Antifa types and so on, the only way that they can have free run is in a high trust society. And up until recently, white people basically trusted everything without question. And so I think that's why it got to the point that it is right now. And
so there were large areas of the United States where you could do that at one time,
yeah,
and not too long ago. I mean, my grandparents used to talk about it.
yeah. So well, but now there's a peculiar thing going on where the high trust is. I'm watching it evaporate in real time. I'm
Well,
watching
of
the high
course,
trust.
because as I said, you like open the door to give somebody coffee and they rob you. So fuck
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So because I'm watching the high trust go away. What I think I'm seeing now is a very, very hard delineation popping up where,
Between
um,
Ani and Nasha, she, as the
between,
Russians would say, between them and us.
yeah, basically. And there are many Anglo-Saxons that are going to side with them and not with us. And this goes for Germans and Nords and all the rest, Mexicans and
Right, right.
blacks too.
The people that were being absorbed into a larger Anglo-American identity before
Yeah, I
everything
guess.
got screwed up.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing is that I think that their expansion is coming to a close. Even though yes, they do control academia, they do control the schools, they control media, government, and they can inform what gets funded and what does not get funded, what gets subsidized and what does not get subsidized. I agree with all of that, and so there is a component of expansion that still exists. But the thing is that once people don't trust in any of the institutions, then they just see all of the attempts of indoctrination and expansion and subjugation. They see it all as being hostile, so they don't imbibe it and incorporate it. Instead, they will superficially. This is you were talking about this, saying that you thought that it was going to be a zombie ideology. I'm starting to
Hmm.
agree with you there. Because I will say things outwardly that will keep people from attacking me. Inwardly, I'm like, I don't fucking care. I just want to get out of the situation.
Yeah, I'm to
So,
the point where I don't like do a lot of talking to people that I can't like be completely honest with.
yeah,
So like
yeah,
most of my conversations that are of any length are really with family members at this point.
yeah. I'm basically the same. There's in my own personal life, there's like one person that I can talk with in a very frank and open and honest manner. One person. That's it. Otherwise, a person that saw me would think that I'm anywhere between a regular normie or possibly one of these alt-light types. And even then, I try to pull back from that so that I come off as more of like a libertarian or something. Those guys where they got the Gadsden flags, but apparently Gadsden flags are now considered terrorist paraphernalia. It's
Oh yeah, I
ridiculous.
saw the Betty Ross flag.
Yeah, it's freaking weird.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there is all kinds I mean, when I was growing up, you had lots of liberals who would openly display the Confederate flag. Leonard Skinner, the Allman
Yeah.
Brothers, all these bands from the South who were big supporters of Jimmy Carter, they all had the Confederate battle flag everywhere.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the way things have turned out.
And now you display a Confederate battle flag, and good Lord, who knows what will happen to you.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, sorry, I was just looking at chat for a moment. Um, Hello to everybody in chat, by the way, just in general. I love you guys. All right. Anyway, um, yeah, I guess I should think about heading out. Um, yeah, I'm glad you streamed, man. Thanks for the uh, thanks for the
Oh, no
invite.
problem, yeah. So I don't know when these will be happening because, as I said, I'm doing them on what is my Sunday, but it changes every week. So
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, you're making me want to stream again. These things are actually quite fun because even though like what are the peculiarities of, okay, so having a positive identity that's rooted in something that you're working toward or building, being better than being negative. Um, there's a funny thing that I've noticed where uh, th- these circles, these spheres that exist basically online of dissidents just discussing things and interacting, in some sense, even though we're not technically, I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure if we're building something or if we're just engaged in like exchanges of hot takes. I don't know what the boundary is there, But
Well, I think what we've done is we've delineated the problems, but we haven't come up with any solutions. So it's
yeah,
but you can't come up with a solution until you know the problem. So I mean, we've
yeah,
got something, but
yeah,
we don't
yeah,
have obviously anywhere near what we need. So that's how I would
yeah,
look at it.
yeah. I'm starting to think in terms of the because I was as I was looking at the chat, like I like these guys. You know, I've seen some of these names in some instances for like a couple of
5 years.
years. Yeah, on and off. Yeah, it's great. You know, and I was thinking to myself, one of the neat things is even though we may not be building like I don't know an ideology or a manifesto or I don't know whatever, pick something, a pamphlet or bumper stickers, it doesn't really matter, but there is something, and that something is that if nothing else there's communication between people that are of like mind. And so there's a place where people can go to it. If nothing else, we can speak relatively openly. You know, that's got to be worth something. That's got to be worth something. So I don't know. I miss these.
It's like the 21st century version of Samizdat.
Of what?
Samizdat, self-published dissident writing in the Soviet Union.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
so they
yeah.
didn't like actually come up with any solution, but they did have a lot of interesting analysis as to what was wrong and how it had gone wrong.
That's funny. That's exactly what we are right now. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. What's the name? Can you spell that out in the chat, please?
Yeah, it means self-publishing. So Samo means self, Sam, and Isdat is to publish. So Samizdat was what they called self-publishing. So like Samogan is self-brewed moonshine, or
Okay.
you have Gostat state publishing. So, but Samizdat is the underground stuff.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's great. Yeah, I think that even like there is a kind of sanity that
There it is in Cyrillic letters by Pepe, who's able to convert his keyboard, whereas I am computer illiterate.
that's cool. I like that a lot. Yeah, there's a funny thing that I noticed about these nefarious people, which is they want you to feel isolated. They want you to feel like you're not thinking correctly, and so on and so forth. And another one that
Like, because if you don't think correctly, you do things like send the link to the stream rather than the link to whatever. I sent the wrong link.
exactly. But they want you to engage in poor decision making. I remember
I
thinking
did
about.
something else today. What did I do? I said somebody's name wrong. That's what it was.
Oh, how dare you! How dare
Well,
you!
no, it wasn't. It was in person. But I mean, the key here is just unbelievable. So it makes my
Yeah.
brain
Well,
slow
but
down.
no. But there's people that are able to talk about these things. That I think that there is a correction of mind. There's a leveling out of thoughts. There is an ability to blow off steam. These are very healthy and positive things that we need. So I think that even though like I've heard people say it, and like I kind of agree in a sense that doing all these streams, it does kind of turn into a social club. Are you actually solving anything? Are you really adding anything? Blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, I kind of get it. I actually do kind of get it. But at the same time, like, it is nice to chit chat. It is nice to talk about things that are on your mind. It is nice to hear what
Well,
other
it does do
people.
one thing. It does, as we talked about, it is something that unifies. That's not in reaction to negativity necessarily. That there is something positive there.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
while this is obviously not building any culture, this is not, leading to people doing some of the things I suggested, like writing novels, uh, it is laying the framework for people to read and enjoy those novels, perhaps.
One would hope. Yeah. Well, anyhow, all I know is you're making me miss streaming. That's all I know.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, Eki.
No, thanks for the link. Thanks for having me. Cheers to chat. Also, wrist check. Wearing my Casio F91W. Just throwing it out there. Prices of everything are going up, but watches are remaining relatively stable. So, highly recommend getting if you don't have a
Because
wristwatch.
watches are like books. Only a
Yeah.
few of us people care about them.
That's right.
But that is again one of those positive things. So what do we value that other people don't? One thing we value is time, and as a result, we've created an entire artistic culture of making timepieces.
That's right. That's right. So just throwing it out there. If you don't go outside with your tracking device, i.e., cell phone, keeping
No, I
track
leave
of
that at
time.
home now.
Yeah, you know what? I'm starting to leave it at home a lot more now as well. And so, yeah, no, I get it. I get it, and that's why I keep a wristwatch so that I don't have to keep my tracking device on me. Anyway, yeah, that's right. Google's most wanted frog is saying Eke is going to announce that he's leaving again for the 14th time. Correct. Now 15th time. All right, I'm going to let out. God bless you. Everyone here, thank you. Cheers and floss.
All right, thanks everybody for showing up. I'll leave this up if you want to spread it around to other people. The first part I thought was okay, but I think the second part, the discussion with Eki, is in some ways even better. So people who want to spread that around, and I'm going to go get an ice cream bar. Hey, everybody, thanks a lot.